I am so excited about tonight's program. As you may know, this event, as well as our author series, are all sponsored by the Friends of the Ferguson Library. And in fact, it's a fundraiser for the Friends. And with these dollars, they help us bring special services to you, special programs, like our Books for Baby program, which gives a book to every single baby born in the Stanford Hospital. Or our Purple Bus. They bought 2 Purple Bus for us, so children can come to, in non-COVID times, children can come to the Ferguson Library on the Purple Bus. We couldn't do anything without the Friends of the Ferguson Library beyond the basics. And so your support of the Friends of the Ferguson Library is just so important. And in fact, tonight, I am proud to tell you that this event has raised over $1,000. So thank you very much for attending. I'm going to introduce you to Denise Marcel, who is one of the committee members of the author series, and I am looking forward to a fantastic evening with you. And you're on mute, Denise.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Now you can hear me. I just want to follow up. I've been involved with the Friends of the Ferguson for 10 years this year, and I helped start this author series. And as Alice mentioned, we do many programs. Another program we do successfully was a mini golf program, again, pre-COVID, where little golfers got to putt their way on greens through the stacks of the Harry Bennett Library. We have a pub crawl, again, when we're not in COVID, where our patrons and people joining us can go to several restaurants, try different foods, and be entertained by local performing artists. And we provided the money for the Purple Bus, which also goes to every preschool in Stanford. And we provide materials, books, ebooks, audiobooks, magazines. So the dollars that you donate go directly to the library. So tonight, I am particularly excited to introduce you to Alka Joshi. Alka is the author of The Henna Artist, which is a first novel. And this is, I'm so excited, I'm an absolute fangirl. This is the best book that I read in the last year. So I'm thrilled that she's with us. Alka is a graduate of Stanford University. She earned her MFA from the California College of the Arts. She has been a copywriter. She has been an illustrator, and she's been a marketing consultant. And she was born in India and moved to the United States when she was 9 years old. And she now is very fortunate to live on the Monterey Peninsula in California. So she's going to tell us about her, a little bit about her road to publication, and then we'll have a conversation about the books. Welcome, Alka.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here. I am excited that the Ferguson Library patrons are excited about the Henna Artist. I think that's really wonderful. So thank you so much for inviting me.
And will you tell us a little bit about your road to how you came to publish the book? I know that it took you 10 years of research and writing.
Yes. So, you know, who knows what they want to be when they're 18 years old, or even when they're 30 years old. And I think it took me till the age of 51 to figure out that maybe I should be a writer. So 3 things had to happen in order for me to become a writer at that moment. The 2008 mortgage recession, the fact that my younger brother had bought a condo in Jaipur, which is where all my extended family lives and where we used to live at one time, you know, my immediate family. And then the third thing was that we had to have an MFA program that was close to my house because I was not going to do a long commute. So with the start of the recession, what happened is that my advertising business, I knew was going to go down for at least a couple of years. Every time there's a crisis like that, an economic crisis, my business goes down. So I thought, okay, sometimes I travel, sometimes I just read. What should I do this time? Well, my husband had been sort of encouraging me to become a long form fiction writer. He said, honey, every time we go out to eat, you are always making up stories about the people sitting next to us. So why not get paid to do something like that? I think you could do it. So anyway, there was this program 3 miles from my house, and I enrolled and signed up. And so from 2009 to 2011, I was in this program. Now, coincidentally, at the same time, my younger brother has bought this condo in Jaipur. And he said to my mom and dad, I bought this condo for you. I have furnished it. Anytime you want to go and visit friends and family, this is just for you. So my mother said to me, honey, as long as you're starting to write and you're going to write some things about India, why not come with me? You can drop me off in Jaipur, stay with me for a couple of weeks, and then come back to California, finish up your semester, and then during a break, come back and get me. So we repeated this pattern about 4 times while I was going through my program. And of course, during that time, I am spending time with my mother in a way that I hadn't since I was 18 and left for college. So, you know, we are doing all these kind of girly things together, right? We are going to the Pink City Bazaar. We are looking at saris. We are going to the jewelry stores. And my mom is telling me about some of the wedding jewelry that she had received for her dowry that she no longer had, and why she no longer had it. That's a long story, so I won't go into that. But so, you know, we're doing all of these. We go to the farmer's market, and we are looking at the fruit that my mom said she cannot get in America. And this is her favorite food of all time. I didn't even know. We also hired a car and went to Agra, where the Taj Mahal is, because my mother had gone to school there for high school and for college. And she was in college at the time that her father called her back to Rajasthan and said, we have found a young engineer for you. It is time for you to get married. You're 18 years old. You're a little old now to be married. And so I need to get you married first because I got 5 other sisters behind you. So my mom goes home. And, you know, she did everything that she was supposed to as a traditionally brought up Indian woman. She sees my father from across the room. That's the first time they've ever met each other. And there's all this family around the room. And then the next time she sees my dad, they're walking 7 times around the fire to get married. Within 4 years, she has 3 children. So by the age of 22, she's got this entire family that she has to take care of. Now, my father was one of those young engineers who was helping rebuild India. So he was constantly getting promoted, or he was getting transferred. And so we were constantly moving around. And my mother is having to move house every couple of years and get us settled into different schools and so on. And at the 10-year mark, my dad says, okay, you know what? I'm going to get a doctorate abroad. And so then my mom has to move us all the way around the world. And we settle in Ames, Iowa, where my father is going to get his doctorate at Iowa State University. And I thought, wow, it's amazing to me that my mother, having been so traditionally brought up and done all of the things that was expected of her, raised me to be so different. I'm the only girl in the family. And she raised me to always be this kind of person that I am today. Somebody who makes her own decisions about her partner, about the kind of career I want to have, about whether I want to have children, how many I want to have. Everything in my life is due to my mother taking a very different path for me than for herself. And it was such a gift that she gave me. So I thought, how can I give her this gift back? Well, I am writing this piece of fiction. Why don't I create a character that, like my mother, is very much aware of what is happening around the world, but secretly really wants to be a part of that larger world. And so she escapes her marriage after 2 years, before any children are born, and decides to navigate the patriarchy on her own terms. And this is where Lakshmi is born. Now, my mom is reading bits of The Henna Artist as I am writing it during my MFA program, and bits of it that I'm writing while I'm in Jaipur. And it was so funny because my mother thought it was a hoot that I made her a henna artist. She had never done henna on her own hands in her entire life. And also she told me that when she was married in 1955, and as you know, the novel starts in 1955, my mother said that her henna was very crude. Back then, they just used to do like maybe a circle here and then do some dots around that circle and then just do the fingertips like this. So she said, it's interesting that you have made your henna artist do these very elaborate designs. And I said, well, Mom, my henna artist, like you, in my imagination, would have made 10 times the money that any other henna artist would have made because you have something special creatively. My mom goes, yeah, okay. So anyway, I present the henna artist as my thesis. I'm probably about 3 drafts into it when I present it. And my mother is there at my presentation. I introduce her as my muse. Well, shortly thereafter, my mother died unexpectedly. And I just felt so bereft. And I thought, wow, I wrote this novel just for Mom. And now she's not even going to be around for me to see it getting published. I thought, what's the use? I put it away. And by now the recession has abated. And so I have my business back and I just kind of drowned myself in my work. Well, 2 years go by and one of my thesis advisors calls me and she said, you know, your novel had so much promise. I don't see anything about it. What is going on? So I told her about my mom. I told her about what's going on in my life. And she said, let's take it out. Let's polish it up. Let me send it to my agent. So that's exactly what she did. She sent it off to Emma Sweeney out in New York. Emma called me within a couple of days and said, I love this book. I love this character of Lakshmi. I love the whole idea about henna. I've been to Jaipur many times for the literary festival there on behalf of some clients, and I would really like to represent you. I said, great. When do we get it published? Emma said, oh, well, gosh, you know, before we go there, let me tell you about some things I'd like you to change in the novel. So then I start, you know, following her advice and I'm cutting things here and I'm cutting things there and I'm shortening, you know, a scene over here and I'm adding something over there based on her advice. 3 or 4 years go by and I say, Emma, by the way, whatever, you know, when are we ever going to send this off to a publisher? And she goes, oh, well, I've taken you as far as I can take you. I'm only a literary agent, you know. You need to get yourself a developmental editor. And I said, what's that? She said, well, you know, they're going to go through the whole novel. They're going to give you an editorial letter and they're going to look at it with fresh eyes and be able to tell you which characters are working for you, which scenes could be made more compelling and so on. I thought, okay. So I hire a developmental editor. Ronit Wagman is her name and she is lovely. And she goes through the whole manuscript a couple of times and then she sends me back her editorial letter. And of course, I think what she's going to say is, your novel is perfect the way it is. You don't need to change a thing. She does not say that. She sends me 12, 15 pages of comments on how I should change this and how I should consider that. And here's another suggestion and yet another. And you know, by this time I was actually really kind of angry. I was frustrated and I thought, this is coming out of my imagination. Why is it that I'm giving the power to everybody else to tell me how I can make this book better? This is ridiculous. This book is never going to see the light of day. I gave up. I put the book away. Another year goes by and I'm looking for something in my desk and, you know, I run across the manuscript and I take it out and I just start reading it and I'm reading it and I'm thinking, wow, you know, I like this novel. I like Lakshmi. I like what's going on. I want to know what's happening with Kanta and Manu and Radha. I want to know what's happening with Malik. And so I thought, okay, I've been working on this. You know, I started this thing about 8 years ago. And if it can hold my interest, then maybe it can hold other people's interest too. So I took out Ronit's editorial letter and I went through item by item what it is she thought that I could do. And I realized she's saying, this book is totally publishable, but these are the ways you could make it stronger. So I go through, I make most of her changes. I send it back to Emma. Emma, please. I started this novel now 9 years ago because it took me that long to make all the changes. Please send it off to a publisher. And she did. HarperCollins buys it. Now I get a new editor. And Kathy is my new editor at HarperCollins. And then she has some things that she would like me to make different in the book. But it's fine because I'm so far along now. You know, I am not worried about getting this thing out into the public. Okay, so we have an 18-month timeline between the time HarperCollins buys it and the time it's supposed to be out in the stores. So in that 18 months, Kathy and I are working on the edits. Their art department is doing this beautiful cover. It just came out so beautifully. Their publicity department is trying to figure out, how do we market someone like Alka, who has never written a short story, who has never written an article that went into a major magazine? How do we market somebody like her? She is a total debut author. And then the sales department is doing a great job selling this book. And I realized that HarperCollins is planning on this being a really big book for 2020, because they have sold it into all the independent bookstores, into all the Barnes and Noble, into all the Indigo stores across Canada, and into Amazon and Walmart, and you name it, they sold it in there. My release date is set for March 10th, 2020. And we all know what happened in March of 2020. One by one, every single book event that I'm scheduled to appear in is canceled. The bookstores closed down. The libraries closed down. Amazon stopped shipping out books. They are only going to ship out essentials like toilet paper now. My book is lower than toilet paper. And I just thought to myself, just shoot me now. What have I been doing? The last 10 years I spent working on this novel, and I gave up so many times, but then I, went ahead and did it anyway. And now I don't get to talk to one single reader. What is going on in my life? What karma am I carrying around from a past life that's causing this? Well, a couple of days later, maybe a week later, I got a call from Kathy, my editor, and she said, I hope you're sitting down because I have some really exciting news. I said, what? She said, Reese Witherspoon has picked your book for May 1st, and she's going to announce it in 5 weeks. And I was like, oh my God. The last thing I expected was somebody really big like Reese Witherspoon to pick up this book and to announce it. I thought, great, I'm going to do some book signings. I'm going to do some conferences. I'm going to do some panels. That's it. I never expected a book club like Reese's to pick it up. And this is where I really have to give so much credit to Reese Witherspoon, because she is a phenomenal woman who is really promoting books of quality, but written by women that have a woman at the center. No one else is doing that. She is really leveling the playing field for us female authors who historically did not always get the promotion dollars and the advertising dollars that male authors used to. It was just a gender bias that was kind of built in over centuries in the publishing world. Well, she has completely changed all of that, because as soon as she and I do our tete-a-tete on Zoom, then suddenly the henna artist starts climbing all of the bestseller lists. We're on the New York Times, the LA Times, the USA Today, Toronto Globe and Mail, everything. We are on all the bestseller lists. And then within another month, the movie companies start calling. Now that kind of blew me away, because I always thought that movie companies waited like a year or two, and then they could see what the sales figures are and whether it was worth their while to adapt a piece of work into the big screen or the little screen. But they started calling right away. And I thought, okay, what do I do now? I called my literary agent. She called the Gotham Group out in LA. And now I have a screen management company in LA who took over that part of the project. And the first thing that Ellen Goldstein-Vane asked me, and she is a phenomenal woman. She is really smart and has been in Hollywood for a long time. She understands these things. She said, do you want this to be a movie or do you see this as a TV series? I said, oh my God, I see this as a TV series. Let's do a TV series, please. And so she said, okay. So she went back to all the proposers and they came back with their proposals. And then I chose the team of Miramax TV, Michael Edelstein, and Frida Pinto. So this was a really amazing thing to actually learn about, because it's like learning a whole new language, working with Hollywood people, looking at all of these proposals and charts and graphs and, all this kind of stuff. So I'm really excited about that. And I know Denise is going to ask me some more about that, so I can talk a little bit more about the Miramax TV adaptation that is in development. But I'm a whore for binge watching. I love binge watching shows. I cannot help myself. I watch one episode and I think, okay, I'm just going to stop at 1. And then I go, okay, I'll stop at 2. And then by the time, the evening is over, I have watched 3 or 4 episodes. I cannot help myself. So I want the henna artist to be like that, a total bingeable show. So that is my 10-year, now probably 11-year journey. I am turning 63 this month, and I feel like I have finally figured out what I want to be when I grow up.
What a fantastic story, and realistic. That it's not an overnight success. How much you worked and how much you revised the book and rewrote the book. That's a testament to being what I always say to my authors. That's a real writer. An writer is who rewrites is a real writer. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, when all said and done, you're making about 5 cents a page.
That's not what they want to hear out there, but but let's talk a little bit about the book. So the book is set, as you said, is in 1950s, a few years after India's independence from Britain, and you immerse the reader in this world, which is one of transition. So did your parents tell you stories about what life was like for their own family life when the British left India? I know you did lots of research. Is it a little bit of both?
Mm-hmm. It is actually a combination of 3 different things. One is talking to my parents and their friends who were alive during that period, but also reading a lot of books from that era that are talking about the history of that era, and also fiction materials from that era written by women, just to show me what women's lives would have been like. And then the third piece of that puzzle was watching a lot of movies from that era, because I wanted to know, what were Indians aspiring to be? What did they want to look like? What did they want to be like? And there's no better place to do that than movies of a certain era. So that was the way in which I did this. Now, the reason that I really wanted to talk about this era is because there is enough written about partition. There's enough written about 1947, when India got its independence, and the 14 to 16 million people who were affected by partition crossing the border between Pakistan and India. But there hasn't been very much written about the 300 million people in India at that time who were not impacted by partition, but just so glad to have their country for themselves again. This was really phenomenal. India had been under British rule, or under the British thumb, for about 200 years. Before that, there had been 4 or 5 centuries of Mughal rule. Before that, there had been all of those European invaders that went across the north of India looking for silks and spices and gold and textiles and, everything. And so India has had a history of invasion, domination, and colonization. And I wanted to have this India with Indians who are breathing once again their own policy. They are deciding for themselves how to educate their children. What kind of industries are they going to rebuild? Because when the British were over India, they destroyed so many industries that existed in India, like the textile industry. They actually broke the thumbs of weavers so that Indians could no longer make those fine textiles that they were known for throughout the world for centuries, because they have Victorian mills in England that were producing mass manufactured goods, and they wanted to sell those to the Indian market. So there were so many industries, so much commerce that had to be rebuilt. And I thought, I want to capture that enthusiasm. And at the same time, we've got Lakshmi, the henna artist, who is also excited about her new life, who's also excited about this sort of crest that she has reached, where she's going to be able to have her own house, her own space, something that she can call just her own, and that she has made possible by the work of her hands and the wit of her brain.
And could you just give a very brief description of the book, because I think many of the people watching haven't read it.
Okay.
And then we'll talk a little bit about those characters.
Okay. Well, we meet up at the beginning of the book with 30-year-old Lakshmi. She is a henna artist to the elite of Jaipur. Jaipur is a city in Rajasthan. And of course, it is a place of Maharanis and Maharajas who still exist today. So it's a little bit traditional and a little bit modern all at the same time, always has been. And Lakshmi is navigating the patriarchy throughout all of these years that she has been a henna artist, but she also has something else that she does on the side, which she prefers to keep a little low key. And that's good. It makes her a lot of money, but she has to keep it low key if she is to maintain her reputation with these elite women. there's a knock on the door, and it is the husband that she left behind 13 years prior in a small village. Why did she leave him behind? Because she wanted to see the larger world, because she wanted to have this way other kind of life that she didn't know was possible, but wanted to try living. So not only does her husband show up at the door, but he brings with him a 13-year-old sister that Lakshmi didn't know she had, who was born after Lakshmi left. So now, not only is she saddled with this husband whom she deserted and has led everybody to think that maybe her husband deserted her, but also she has this 13-year-old sister that she has to take care of. She wouldn't think about, letting her go sleep on the street because she has such a sense of responsibility about her own family. So she now also has to take care of this sister. So how is she going to deal with all of these complexities in her life just when she is at the cusp of realizing her dreams about having her own house? Lots of complications ensue.
And while Lakshmi feels responsible for this 13-year-old sister, there is a lot of conflict between these two. And Radha, even though she's a young teenager, seems to be an antagonist, and that surprised me as the reader. Radha is constantly challenging Lakshmi, who has worked for years to change and improve her social position. And Lakshmi is such an appealing character. She's independent. She is so focused on her goals. She has this long-term goal to build her status and her independence, and her short-term goal to finish building her own house. And that part alone is so appealing in the book and so extraordinary, because as she makes money, she adds something else to the house, and she pays her contractor. And this is 1955. How many women are anywhere in the world are building and designing their own houses? And yet Radha questions and criticizes her older sister, who she's just met, and she questions her motives. So could she be an antagonist?
Yes, she is definitely antagonist. I assumed at the very beginning when I started with all these characters, I thought it was going to be one of the elite women who was going to be the antagonist to Lakshmi's protagonist. But no, it turned out to be Radha. And, that is just something that happened through the process of writing and through the process of understanding deeper what Radha is all about and what Lakshmi is all about. So, I know a little something about sibling relationships, even though I don't have a sister. I have two brothers. And with siblings, you know that you love them. You love the very core of them. You would give them your blood if it were required. But you also sometimes you kind of think, God, I wish they weren't in this world. They're driving me crazy. And so sibling relationships are fraught with love and hate. And so that is what I'm trying to show in this. Also, what's happening is there's a 17-year gap between these two sisters. So they actually could be more like a mother-daughter story. And I've had so many women in book groups around the world tell me that, oh yes, this totally resonates with their mother-daughter relationship in their life, or it resonates with their sister-sister relationship in their life. So Radha is a young girl. She is a representation of this kind of a pure soul that we have when we are younger. When we are younger, before we have anybody telling us, don't be too ambitious, don't be too loud, don't be too whatever, don't be too showy, don't show off in front of everybody else. So Radha is the purest representation of what we are as girls, and she knows what she wants. She has not had her judgment clouded yet by other forces. She has pretty much raised herself in the village, and so she knows that she wants a family, the family that she was deprived of as she was growing up. Now, she cannot understand why Lakshmi, who has been tempered over the years, who has learned how to survive within society by maintaining her facade of composure, by escaping the gropes of all the husbands of the elite women that she has to deal with, by making sure that she absorbs the insults that are directed at her because of classism, casteism, and colorism. So she has been tempered over time, and she's trying to teach Radha all of these lessons about how to get along in society. Well, what Lakshmi doesn't understand is Radha feels that she already has navigated so much of life. And so why doesn't Lakshmi just give her credit for that? So the two sisters are not understanding one another. And hopefully what you come to as a reader by the end is that they do find a balance, a way to understand one another in the same way I think that we all sort of find that balance in our relationships in life.
Because they're in the book, their situations change dramatically. So the novel, you mentioned the caste system, explores the caste system, and we see that in very detailed ways. And what can you talk about people's ability to, and you're mentioning Lakshmi, ability to navigate the rules and restrictions within that caste system. And I was wondering how much of that, does the caste system exist today and in that same way, or has it evolved?
Oh, the caste system still exists today. And it is still a prevalent part of how to conduct oneself in society, and sort of, it's a way for people to sort of know their place. But it is not, but it's very subtle. In the very same way, I think that we have classism here in our society in the West. Nobody talks about it. It's not an overt admission of I belong to this class or that class, but there is recognition of what caste you're from. And some of these things are actually overt. I'll give you an example. In 2019, when I went to India and I opened up the Times of India, and it is, like our New York Times in India. But when I opened it up to the marriage section, it was divided according to caste. So parents who are looking for a mate for their son or daughter, if they're Brahmin, they were listed under the Brahmin caste. So there are some ways in which it is completely overt and other ways in which it's not. So one of the things I found in talking to a lot of young women in 2019, I went to 5 different cities just to learn what things might have changed for them since my mother's time when she was married in 1955. So these women are telling me they don't care about caste. But keep in mind that I am talking to women who are in the middle class. So I'm talking to them as they're getting their advanced degrees. They're getting their BAs, but then they're also getting their MAs, their master's degrees. They are starting their own careers. So in the middle class, these women say, I don't care about caste. I go to school with all kinds of people, and I'm interested in all kinds of people. However, when it comes time for my parents to choose a partner for me, they will choose within my caste, my community, because they want to make sure that in India, where it's families who are getting married, not individuals, but families who get married, their families have to make sure that they can all get along for future lifetimes, right? They have to make sure that the 2 young people and the 2 families involved are going to speak the same language, eat the same kind of food, celebrate the same customs. So that's what they're interested in finding for their son or daughter. And so I thought, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. But then I said, ladies, if you have the wherewithal to get to college, to get great grades, to start a career, why are you letting your families determine your partner for you? And they said something really interesting, which resonated with me. They said, my parents love me to death. They would never want me to be unhappy. So of course they're going to try to choose a partner for me who will make me happy. There is no way that they're not going to do that. And today's girls will actually get an opportunity to, let's say that their families set up their dating profile. Their families will receive all of the requests for possible marriage proposals. And then their families are going to vet let's say the top 5 candidates, and then they will be presented, these girls will be presented with the top 5, top 3, and they will get a chance to meet with these people in a way that my mother and father did not get to meet before they were actually married. So things have loosened up a little bit, and there is a little more choice, and these girls of the middle class are able to navigate and to negotiate with their family a little bit more about the partner that they're going to choose in their life. But ultimately, these are family decisions. And we have to remember that the culture in India is very family based, as opposed to the culture in the West, which is very individual based.
And they clearly accept that, because that's what they know, that's what they're comfortable with. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the role of women. Your book will be translated into 23 languages, which is quite exceptional. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So that means many women, mothers, daughters, sisters from different cultures are going to be reading the book and perhaps seeing themselves, identifying themselves in different ways, as you said, with sisters and mother-daughter relationships. So while the setting is patriarchal 1950s India, women in India, I understand, are also, there is discrimination today, just like there is in the United States. I mean, you know, women are faced with glass ceilings and even individual rights. How do you explore that in the book?
Yes. You know, you mean like the fact that women don't have as much of an equal right as the men do? Yes, because for example, the reason that Lakshmi has to rely on the husband of one of her clients to buy her house or to buy the property where her house is because a woman wasn't allowed to own property. And, you know, back in the 1950s, she wasn't allowed to go out alone. You know, she can't just go out alone to a party. People would think that was really bizarre. So she has to be very careful. She's in a vulnerable position without a man, without any children, and without any family nearby. She's in a very vulnerable position. So she's always very careful about how she surrounds herself with people or work or, you know, whom she is relying on to help her achieve one thing or another. She's very careful. And she's careful not to owe too many people her livelihood or the next step up the ladder for her. She wants to accomplish most of these things by herself, as much as she can by herself, because if she doesn't, then she's going to owe somebody, and she really doesn't want to go there, because that someone probably is going to be a man, and she doesn't want to be beholden to a man for her livelihood.
So that's one of the ways she juggles her reality of what she, and her goals with her dreams. I mean, it's a way of her staying in control.
And, you know, Denise, I have heard from women all over the world. As you know, I've done about 320 book clubs all over the world now, all over the world. And so what I keep hearing from women is, oh my gosh, you know, I am not from India. I don't know anything about India, but I read this book and this feels like it could be my story. Feels like it could be my mother's story. Feels like it could be my grandmother's story. So I think that women around the world resonate with Lakshmi, with how careful she has to be in her circumstances, and also with her desire to be independent financially, with her desire to create the terms of her own life. I'm definitely getting that from a lot of women across the world. And it moves me to tears sometimes because, you know, so I graduated in 1980 from college, and I went immediately into the working world. And I thought, okay, you know, we women, we have arrived. We are going to conquer the world. We're going to conquer the business world. And, you know, I'm going to dress for success. I'm going to have I have my little suits, and, you know, I have my briefcase, and, you know, it's going to be just great. And I found out immediately that there was still a glass ceiling. I found out immediately that there is sexism rampant in the corporate culture. And I thought, wait a second, I thought we were supposed to have come so far. How did this happen? And so what breaks my heart is that a lot of the young women now who I'm talking to, as I talk to these book clubs who have read The Henna Artist, the young women are telling me that still exists today. We are still experiencing that kind of gender bias in our jobs, at school, in different situations that we're in, even in our marriage, and in our marriages. So, I don't know if it's going to take men having babies in order to, get even on this gender score. But I continue to be hopeful. I continue to think that women like Lakshmi will keep pushing ahead, will keep moving the agenda forward. And I think that there are many women who are helping move the agenda forward. So that is a huge piece of pride for me, and also hope.
And I agree with you. I mean, I think the culture will change, the corporate culture will change as there are more women, and they're creeping up in the top, in C-suites of corporate, of the corporate world. So we wanted to have time for questions, but I did want to ask you about the movie rights that Frida Pinto will star in it, and she was in Slumdog Millionaire, and she's producing. So
Yeah.
could you just give us a minute or so what the status is right now? Because with COVID, there's very little filming going on. And another question I have, will you be seeing the script?
Okay. So here is how it happens in Hollywood. So there's going to be about a year or two of development that goes on before filming even starts. So we are not looking at filming until maybe 2022, late, maybe early 2023, because most of the filming has to happen in India. It has to happen in Jaipur, and it has to happen in Shimla, the two places that are mentioned in the henna artist. So much of this will be determined, I think, by that. But what happened is that Michael Edelstein, who is an executive producer, was in charge of NBC Universal out in England at the time that he was overseeing the production of Downton Abbey. He loves Downton Abbey. And the moment he read the henna artist, he said, oh my gosh, this could be an Indian Downton Abbey. This is so lush, and it's so full of sensory experiences, and so full of the richness of India, that I think we could do a beautiful job with this. Now, he sent off the novel to Frida and said, Frida, oh my gosh, you got to read this book. I love it. I think this could be a great starring vehicle for you. So then Frida reads it, and she goes, oh my God, you're right. Michael has a first look deal with Miramax TV, so they get them on board. And then when I talked to all of them, because I got to talk to all of the different proposers on Zoom, when I talked to them, they were just so serious and very clear about how they wanted the henna artist to be. And I said, how do you want me involved? And they said, well, we would love it if you wanted to be an executive producer. What that means is that you will be a sort of fly on the wall. There's nothing more glamorous than that. So you're going to be a fly on the wall in the writer's room. So as the writers are developing the script, you will have a chance to say, oh, Lakshmi would never say it that way, or Malik is not really, up to doing something like that. How about trying this instead? Or how about trying a scene with Ravi and Radha that I had to actually cut out of the original henna artist? How about you guys, insert a scene like that? So I get a chance to put my 2 cents in, but I think 2 cents is about as much as I get to put in. But I have complete confidence that they are going to maintain the integrity of the henna artist, because they love the henna artist the way that it is. They're not trying to make it something that it's not. So it will not come out to be Star Wars 13. It will look like the henna artist. And then the other thing is that, they've hired a showrunner. And the showrunner asked me, he goes, now, Alka, you wrote all the words in the henna artist. How are you going to feel if we have to add a character, or we have to add scenes that weren't even in your book, that you didn't even imagine? And I said, hey, I'm a big girl. You know what? I am just happy we've gotten this far, and I'm really excited about what you guys come up with. So maybe it won't be exactly the henna artist, but I think it's going to be close enough, and I think you'll maintain the beauty and the integrity and all the different layers of this story. There's the story layer, the visual story layer. Then there is, of course, the casteism and classism layer. Then there's the whole idea of the political background of 1950s India. And then there's the entire layer of the beauty of arts like henna that are still being practiced today. So I said, you guys go to it. I can handle it. And I'll just be this little fly on the wall.
Well, you sound like, yes, you sound like the perfect partner for a production company. Now, do you know,
Okay.
no, but do you know what cable network, streaming channel, they will be doing figuring out the distribution. Well, we can't wait. All right, just one more question, which is about, you have sold 2 more books, and one of
Yes.
them is right behind you, The Secret Keeper.
Yes. The Secret Keeper of Jaipur continues the story 12 years into the future when Malik, the little assistant that Lakshmi has, who was only 8 years old in the henna artist. And, you know, Denise, like a lot of people, I'm sure you loved Malik. Malik has stolen everybody's heart. People just adore him. And, you know, I made him Muslim for a reason. I made Lakshmi Hindu for a reason. I wanted them to have this symbiotic relationship because I really believe in promoting good and harmony and hopefulness in this world as opposed to conflict. So Malik has stolen everybody's heart, which means that I have huge Muslim readership as well as Indian readership, as well as Western readership, which is wonderful. So Malik is 20 years old in The Secret Keeper, and he is going to be sent down to Jaipur once again to the palace because he has an apprenticeship there. And he's going to find out some secrets about things that are happening in the palace that he's going to tell Lakshmi about. Lakshmi, what do I do with these secrets? These are huge. Do I say something? Do I not say something? How do I say it if I want it to be revealed, and so on, because it means people's lives. At the same time, Lakshmi is up in Shimla, and she is dealing with Malik's love interest, whom he had to leave behind. And of course, that woman is very upset with Lakshmi because how dare Lakshmi get in the middle of their relationship and send him away? So there's a lot of resolution that has to happen there. And then the third book will deal with Radha as an adult, and she will be 30-something years old. She's living in Paris with her Parisian husband. She has 2 little girls. She has the family she has always wanted. And somebody shows up at her door, and I won't say who, but somebody shows up at her door completely unexpected from her past, from the henna artist. And she's kind of blown away. She has to figure out what to do with this intrusion into her life. She is on the cusp, by the way, of developing her signature scent, which I'm having a lot of fun researching right now. They're all about perfume and scents and so on, because that's her job. And, you know, this is a career, you know, maker for her. So at the same time that that is happening, this huge crisis is going to come to her doorstep. How is she going to handle it all?
Oh, I can't wait. Well, we'd love to have you back in June to share Malik's story. So we have lots, I can see we have lots of questions. Barb, oh, one question I did see was, could you give us some of your favorite authors and maybe one or 2 titles? Because what we'd like to do is follow up our events with emails to everyone who's registered with those titles.
Okay. Well, one title I have to recommend because it is from my thesis advisor, the one who helped me get my agent in the first place, because it's a book I loved. I absolutely loved it. It's called The Blood of Flowers, and it's another historical fiction taking place in Iran in the 15th century. Yeah. So that is really a lovely book about a young rug weaver. And then, of course, I love Tracy Chevalier's book, The Girl with the Pearl Earring. You know, I love her, her historical fiction because I always learn something about a craft in every single one of her books. And in that one, we learned how the paints were made in Vermeer's time. So fascinating. Another book I love is this last year that I read called Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And that informed me so much about South Koreans living in Japan. How did they even get to Japan? Why did they immigrate to Japan? And then how has their life been since they moved to Japan? So that's a saga over 4 generations that I just loved. Let's see, another one that I read this year that I really loved is another Indian author. Her name is Madhuri Vijay, and the book is called The Far Field. And I think that she's an exceptionally talented author as young as she is. I don't even think she's 30 yet. And she's written this very sophisticated book, I think, about the crisis that's happening up in the north of India in the Kashmiri region. And there's a young girl who goes up there to look for her mother's old lover. So very good. Does that give you enough to go on?
No, that's great. We'll send that out to everyone. So Barbara Thomas has just joined us. Barbara is our librarian who's in charge of all adult events and my partner in crime as we plan the author series events. Barb, do you have some questions?
We have lots of questions. I don't know if we're going to be able to.
Right.
I'm going to try and combine a few. So someone is saying that many of the books that they've read about India focuses on abusive husbands, either physical or mental, and is wondering about the circumstances today. And then else, just on top of that, specific to the book, is asking if Lakshmi feels compelled to support her husband because of her guilt over her parents, respect for her mother-in-law, or is it fear? And talks about the emotional complexity and how authentic the relationship and your characters are.
Okay. So I think that domestic violence is a problem all around the world. It is not just a problem in India. It is a problem that we really need to address all over the world. But the reason that I made Hari an abusive man is because unlike my father, Hari had to do something super mean in order for Lakshmi to feel like she has to leave that relationship. My father is not at all abusive. My father is 88 years old. And he is so proud of me. And after every kind of public event like this, he always calls me and says, honey, you did so well. You're just impressing me so much. And I'm so proud of you for having written this book. And you know what? No matter how old you get, it's so nice to hear that from your parents. So, Hari had to I had to think about some reason that Lakshmi has to leave this cozy little nest where she's got this wonderful mother-in-law who's teaching her all about herbs and remedies. And then this husband who is actually kind of immature and young. He's young, he's selfish. It's not like he's a mean person at his core. And I think that is why we see the evolution in his character as the book goes on. But I don't think she's ever compelled to take care of him or to take him back or any of that kind of stuff, because there are some concepts in here that I fundamentally believe as a person who has lived in this life. And one of them is, I think it is easier to forgive than it is to forget. And when you've been in a relationship that has had that much trauma, I think it is easier to say goodbye. I forgive you, please forgive me. Let's move on with our lives, than it is to go back and say, okay, let's try this one more time. So that's just a fundamental belief that I have, and I never ever imagined that Lakshmi would go back to Hari. The other, I think, irreconcilable difference between them is that Hari wants children and Lakshmi does not. That is irreconcilable. You cannot, you can't go back to that.
Your dad. So somebody had commented, wanted to know what was it like to be dropped into Ames, Iowa? And then also, how did your dad feel about your mother raising such an independent woman?
Well, I think, like I just said, I think my dad was very busy working. I'm not sure it even occurred to him that mom was raising me to be so very independent. But I think, by the time he was like, not working as much, he was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we've got this independent girl and I guess she wants to do her own thing and I guess she's going to, okay, fine, So he has always been immensely, immensely proud of me the way that my mother has. So it's really good to have parents who are constantly telling you that they are proud of you. And then let's see, the other part of your question was something about
Ames, Iowa.
Oh, Ames, Iowa. Oh my gosh, being dropped into Ames, Iowa was a real culture shock, I have to tell you. So, you know, we came from a school where I wore this blue starched uniform, and I went to what's called a convent school. It was called St. Sophia, and I had a sash across my uniform. I was taught by Christian nuns who taught us in English all day long, and we had 1 hour of Hindi grammar. And everybody at school looked like me. Then we come to Ames, Iowa, and my brothers and I are the only brown people in class. And so people are constantly staring at us and asking us questions like, where did you get that tan? And then we said, oh, we're Indian. And they'd go, oh, what tribe? What tribe are you from? And we didn't understand what they were asking us. So there were a lot of, I think, miscommunication, misunderstandings. And what happened to me is I realized, oh, their perception of India is very different from the India that I came from. So the perception of India that they have is it's a third world country, it's underdeveloped, there's illiterate and starving people there, and there's cows running all over the street. And you know, my India was so different. I didn't know what to say, so I just shut up. I just like, okay, I'm not going to talk about where I'm from because I don't understand what they're talking about. So for a long time, I think I just didn't want to acknowledge that I was from India. I just tried to pretend I wasn't. Of course, that's hard to do with my skin color and my name, but whatever, you know, you're a kid, you can make all kinds of things happen in your head. And so I think it wasn't until I started writing about India that I started learning about the history and started asking my dad a lot more about what was happening during that era, and also how hard and how valiantly and how much resilience the Indian people have had to show, and how hard they've had to work to build India back up. You know, this was a country that taught us our Arabic numerals, you know, the numerals that we still use today. You know, they had a mathematics system. They had an astronomy was very well developed in India. So much was developed in India that I think over time we have forgotten that this is a place where a lot of amazing developments came from. So I was able to regain pride in my heritage because of the research that I did for the henna artist and now for the Secret Keeper of Jaipur, because I think it's so important for all of us to have pride in our heritage, to have pride about where we came from and our families and where they came from. So it's been actually phenomenal to gain that kind of knowledge about my country. So yes, Ames, Iowa was a culture shock, but now I feel like I have my foot in both the East and the West, and that's great.
Now we are just about out of time, and I'm going to hand it back to Denise. But before I do, I want to let you know that we have so many great comments coming in about how much people are enjoying you and how much they've enjoyed the book. Someone has said that it's as delicious as a 7-layer cake. We have some really great comments here. And one very quick question. Someone is asking if the book will be available in Spanish.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it will be available in Spanish. There have been, 23 different publishers who have bought it to be translated into different languages. The Italian version is about to be launched in the next couple of months, and I'm pretty sure the Spanish version is too. So yeah, it's amazing how many different people want to translate it into their language and learn about the Indian culture. And of course about Lakshmi in general as a woman. So thank you everybody for listening, and thank you so much for your lovely comments. I'm just reading them now. Oh my goodness, there's so many. And I think my dad is on here too, by the way. So I don't know which one he is, but hi Dad. Maybe Dad's the one telling us about the 7-layer cake.
Denise, you're on mute.
I'm going on and on about how exciting this has been to have you. Thank you for joining us. You've been absolutely delightful, as you can see from the comments about, oh, it's excellent and she's marvelous. And I just want to remind everyone who's watching that you can, in the chat, you'll see you can buy the book through Elm Street Books. The link is right there. Just click on it. And the book will be yours, and you cannot live without it after this event with Alka Joshi.
Denise,
come and see us again.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Alice. Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Ferguson Library. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. today. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Goodbye.
Bye.